spite of everything you've done, you have not found the sun that I'd like to aspire to be. It's just not part of me. It's not a wait and see. It's happening constantly. And you had too much to bear. This is why I never spoke it out. And we had too much to bear. This is just what life is open up. And see through me. And I can't see. And be late. This is what the world takes. In spite of everything we've tried, we have not got the right. Check your mic. Check.
Check.
Awesome. I
Working.
think we're good. Hello, welcome to Spirit Animal. My name is George of the Jungle, and today we have Gianna Yoga. She is a practitioner as well as an educator in yoga and other practices. We'll go ahead and start with a couple of questions here, but before we do start, I wanted to go ahead and speak a little bit of our relationship and how we actually started to communicate or come about. So there was an event at a club or a coffee shop called Kava Bar. And then from there, she came up and gave me a $5 tip, and then it just evolved to something bigger. She was the only person that gave me a tip that night. Yeah.
Really?
And I think I told Mercy to take that same $5 bill to give you a tip and put it in the jar.
Oh my goodness, you're so funny. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
really sweet.
But it was a great night. It was for Richard's birthday, for Richard Lipton, one of our mentors. But that's how we met connection or tapped together. There was some things that we talked about throughout Instagram and some things that she was touching points that are interesting to me and as well are interesting to other people who are fond of children or have offspring.
Mm-hmm.
So discussing karma or your personal views, big questions. Are we born with karma residue, or does karma exist only in the realm of unknowing, or does the one become conscious of it? So are we conscious that we are doing bad when we're born, or is that part of experience?
Yeah. I know, it's so I don't completely remember the conversation that I was having with myself over the internet, but I know it's a common thing. It's a common question that I have for my friends that do have kids are like, okay, now that you've had kids, because like in the yogic sense, like I come from the yogic context, and we like to believe that everyone is eternally and essentially born good. But I ask my friends after they've had kids, like, all right, do you really think now that you've had children, some of us have the spawn of Satan as kids. And we wonder, I don't know, like, you're new to this world. Is everything, is this an issue? Or is this true? Is this a good person? And sometimes it's not true. And my yogic, um, fellows who also teach and have been educating and practicing for a long time, they have said, I'm supposed to say yes because I'm a yoga educator, etc. But after having children, I would say no, because there are some things that you watch kids do, or that maybe you've watched yourself do, very hard to do at a young age, but where you're like, that was intrinsically bad. And nobody taught them that. Nobody taught them that what good and bad are yet, really. And yet they're, testing these waters in the aggressive way. And so there's like, there's all sorts of different philosophies around this. I'm not a Buddhist. I do have Hindu practices, but because I wasn't born into the Hindu religion, I'm not Hindu. But essentially, we're taught that I study at the Maharishi International University, so I'm a student of Maharishi, and there's this idea that we are born with the karmic residue of where it is that we came from. Now, can it be it's said that when you get to the people realm, that you're of a higher consciousness. Yeah. Like you're probably already some sort of animal or something like that. Maybe you even have memories of past lives of being like wolves or something like that. I have things like that. And that even of the animal karma, or like, some of us were warriors in past lives and like different, renditions of this existence of Earth. We've been violent. We've killed villages. We've done all these different things that we now do in a smaller, more different spectrum, whereas now we're just kind of like buying people out of their neighborhoods and making it hard for them to live instead of like going into villages and killing off populations. But that karma stays with you in some way. And so there's this idea that you choose your parents. So your soul or your atom or your essence or whatever is choosing this life. So you chose to be born to the parents that you were born to in this lifetime to help you get it. So you're born with whatever karma has come from the past. And the circumstances that you're in now are here to help you or challenge you on that path. Like, okay, are you going to get it this time? And though we're all born with some sort of challenge, like, some people are born into lower socioeconomic situations. Some of us are born with birth defects. Some of us are born with, DNA that will be exposed later, or genes that will be exposed later in life, where we have some sort of terminal illness or, mental illness or something like that. We're all born with some sort of struggle. And whether it is us having bad karma or good karma, we're born with a struggle. And we can say that that is our challenge for this lifetime in order to overcome it or use it for good or figure out how to transform it in this lifetime in order to help us like level up for the next lifetime, or just be done with being human, like figure out what your life's purpose is. And then you can just like turn into a star, which sounds better than being a human.
It does.
But I try to not be like, okay, everyone is born good or everyone is born bad, but we are all born with a struggle, and what we do with it is up to us. And those decisions we make are based off of our past. It's our job to figure out how to make better choices in this lifetime.
So you're saying that karma itself, like the good that we're coming with, or as well the gifts that we are presented with at birth, are like karma. They come both in the same sack.
Yeah, and it's like it's the residue of where we've been. And every choice we make is creating our next version of us within this lifetime. You know, how many times already as a person have you lived and transformed? You know, we have so many deaths and rebirths within the lifetime we're in. And what we are reborn into in this lifetime is affected by our choices of this lifetime, and it's the same lifetime to lifetime.
So we should pay attention to these lifetimes that we're birthing and exploring rather than the ones that we haven't even tapped into.
Yes, that is people that are really into past life regression get really into the past, and sometimes they spend so much time working on past life regression and doing past life therapy that they forget the life that they're living now, and that is counterintuitive. But yes, and because that is all you could spend, I don't know, 10 hours a week or something trying to like sit and be present with your past, and you can also use the lessons from this lifetime, which is now the past, as life keeps going, to help you make better decisions for the future.
So there's no such thing as present past karma. It's just living in the moment.
It's just now. Yeah.
So the question is, because I have children myself,
Yeah.
and then knowing that they are evil, we tend to we tend to lay a lot on ourselves, saying, okay, maybe it's because the way that I reacted, and maybe that's the repercussion of our acting that way.
Sure.
A lot of these parents do think that way. We're at fault because we need to be a better parent.
Very good point. Yeah.
So why is it that
right? Well, I like to think of us all as bubbles. We're in our own bubble, right? We have our own little world, and it is ours. And while our bubble, our world, is bumping up next to another bubble, even when you birth a bubble out of your bubble, that bubble becomes its own bubble, right? It's made up of DNA that is very similar to yours, but it is its own bubble now. Those bubbles will bump against each other for the rest of their life in some way because they came from you, right? But also because they're in proximity with you. Some people divorce their parents because it's not healthy to be around them. It's like, you're not helping me, you're abusive, blah, blah, blah. The bubbles are not touching each other anymore, but there's still some sort of residue that exists there. But the more your bubbles are bumping, the more you're affecting each other. So it's not like, okay, my kid is absolutely insane, right? You have like a 3-4-year-old or something like that, and you're just like, what actually? On a daily basis, you're just like, you're out of your mind. They could be out of their mind because they're 4 and their brains are literally not developed. Like, your brain is not fully developed until you're 25. So you're dealing with something that is complete mush, they haven't even started developing their visual center until they're out of the womb. They're developing in this like little mush bottle, but they haven't had the feedback to have their visual system even develop. So now they have to take in all that information, blah, blah, blah. So all of that experience is creating them and their experience and their responses. And you interacting with them, your bubble bumping against theirs is going to elicit a reaction. It's the ripple effect in anything, So yes, you reacting to your kid in a certain way is going to affect them and for the rest of their lives, but also they are having their own world too. And when they act out, like, it's almost like their responsibility to do that. They have to test the waters. They have to like see what hurts, see how they can push things, see what was right and wrong, see what your responses are to learn about the world. The goal is to not make them afraid of the world, teach them about the world that they're stepping into through you, because you're their introduction to the world, right? Yeah. But yeah, you can't put it all on you, like, it's not, and culturally this is not the case for every kind of culture that is raising a kid, but it's not the it's not the kid's responsibility to take care of the parent just because the parent made them. Like, you decided to to have a body created for a soul to take structure in, and then you have to like let that soul find its purpose and do what it needs to, whether it involves you or not. So it takes a lot of work to detach as a parent from your roles as a parent and who you are as a person, so that you're able to recognize your responsibility in facilitating their, good habits and growing, but also allow them to become whatever unique thing it is that they become. Because you don't want to hinder that in any way. It's like if your kid became a monk and found a spiritual path, or became a priest or a rabbi or whatever, chances are that's like, you'd be like, all right, like, you need to do this. Okay, go for it. If they become like a professional bungee jumper or something like that, you're going to be like, I don't know, man. Like,
I mean, I would be okay.
Like the riskier things are something, the more we're kind of like, or the more out of the box things are, or extreme things are, or the further it could take them away from us, the harder it is to like reconcile what the whole point of that whole 18, 25 years of raising the thing was. It's like, all right, I did that for 20 years now. All right, bye. Like it's a whole, it's a, I am speaking like I have children and I do not. And there's a whole, like, you open yourself up to a whole different existence when you have kids.
You do.
It's kind of cool,
It's fun. It's interesting, but at the same time, it's like when you have separate eyes looking at you, or their perspective is on you as well.
Do they keep you accountable, do you feel like? Do you feel like you're a better person because of them?
My smallest makes me a better person.
That's cool.
She's like, okay, Daddy.
She's testing you.
You saw that?
Yeah.
Why?
Uh-huh.
I'll come, Daddy.
It's cool.
It is. She does make me a better person.
Yeah.
My oldest, I want to say, we just tip noses, and we might just be too alike. I don't know if that's a thing.
I've heard that a lot. Yeah.
Two long-nosed people can't look at each other at all. Uh-huh. And we're just the same persona. We carry ourselves the same way, and we just look alike. It might just be the similarities. But we can't be in the same room for too long.
Interesting.
And it's either she's picking at me or I'm picking at her.
Huh.
Vice versa.
I wonder what the lesson there is. Because if she's a good mirror, where you're like, wow, I see a lot of myself in you. Like, what is there that she's trying to teach you that you haven't gotten yet, and vice versa?
My patience. She always tests my patience.
Yeah.
And it's gotten better, I want to say, but my structure is just there. I just love for things to be in a certain way at a certain time, and that's how she tests me. So that would be the lesson, I think, just to be more lenient on her.
Yeah. Control is a hard one.
Yeah. I'm very controlled when it comes to my children, and in a lot of perspectives in my life. So she showed me that as well too.
Yeah.
So that might have been a big lesson. Yeah. She might be not the evil one, but myself.
There's any time that there's like a butting of heads or like a friction point, it creates heat, and like how heat also liquefies and like creates transformation. So what it is that you do in like a friction point will determine what it is that you transform into,
Just the perspective of what direction you take it to.
Yeah. You can chew on that.
I'm really chewing on it. So to get into the first question, and let's focus off of evilness on children. Your daily routine as a child. What do you think?
As a child?
As a child.
Oh, Jesus. There was no daily routine.
There was just everything.
I grew up with a sick parent. So my dad left for work in the morning, and we were just feral. So we took the bus to school. We took care of ourselves. There was a time where like the school was providing lunches, and then they stopped doing that. And because my parents didn't like communicate with the school or anything, they never knew that. So I'd go to school from like second grade and on without a lunch. Like I'd steal food from my friends and like never ate breakfast, like no structure at all. We never sat down to eat dinner together. We were like climbing on the counters to eat out of the cabinets, warming up frozen food from like the moment we could like reach a microwave or whatever. So there was zero structure. When I would make one of my parents mad, I would get grounded. I was the only one that got hit. There's 4 of us kids for whatever reason, but I think I was probably that kind of similar to my mom, where I pushed her buttons often, and I was like the bad one, just always kind of testing the waters. But yeah, there was no structure at all. Like I would take a Solo cup and fill it with ice cream and walk to the bus stop at all seasons. That would be my breakfast.
Ice cream.
And ice cream. And I remember someone's mom told my mom, and then I got in trouble. And it's like, okay, we can look at the parent-kid relationship. It's like, well, maybe if you made me breakfast or taught me about diet at all, I would know what I'm supposed to eat at this time of day. Otherwise, I'm a literal 7-year-old. You leave me alone, I want ice cream, you know? So, yeah, we were pretty feral.
Yeah, I would say I could find similarities as well. With my mom, my parents were separated. I didn't meet my mom until I was 7. But at that time, she was the same way. You know, it's more like everybody knew how to cook an egg, so everybody knew how to cook.
Yeah, there
they
you
just
go.
figured it out.
Uh-huh.
My eldest sibling, she just was always on her own, bringing other people into the house, and it was just a different environment, a chaotic environment. So I understand your perspective, where you came from. Yeah, as a kid, I can see why things happen and how they develop, but your parents should learn at that point in time, as how we are learning. You know.
Yeah, when you watch things develop and it's not developing the way you want it to, you have to guide it along a little bit.
Yeah. And like being in the situation as our siblings all have different parents, so it was always a tit for tat. You know, it's like you're this way because your father's this way. You're this way because your mother's.
That
this
is
way.
not helpful language.
So it was a very separative, environment, and it was just a different growth. So I can see the same perspectives of yourself. Now that affected you in the past. As an adult, do you think your routine has become stronger, or you implement a routine, or you're everywhere still?
If I could take my pants off before my shoes, I would.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't do anything the same twice. I don't teach the same class twice. I thrive in a chaotic setting. So it's gotten me better at that. I do, though, like routine. It's hard to stick with it sometimes, but I just find like little things. So like, for example, now I wake up, I meditate, I do an unveil yoga, which is like an oil massage, and then I shower. It's like an Ayurvedic technique. Because I was probably because I was raised the way that I was, I have more of a windy, we call it prakriti, which is like your true nature. So I'm more vata. There's more air and space in my system. So I tend to thrive in environments that are really spacey. And if I let myself be too spacey, I will just shoot off into the sky and like build a bunch of imbalance in my body, basically. This is a similar or an interesting thing that yoga people try to do. They want to like go up and out and like, just leave their body all the time and like, oh, I meditated for 5.5 hours today. It was amazing. But like, that's not actually good for your physical constitution, which is what we're given now and what we're supposed to be taking care of. So I have to implement routine and structure because it builds stability for my like very airy, windy being.
I can feel you. Once I get into something, it's like my mind's here, and like I finish one thing over there. Like you can see the substrates over there. I haven't put it into the right places. Yeah. Because I was setting it up and taking a shower at the same time.
Right. Yes. I can relate. Lots of half-started things in my home.
Exactly.
I see everything through, but we start 8 things at one time.
Mm-hmm. But they get done at the end of the day.
They do.
They do get done. Yeah. Get yelled at, if you have a partner or not.
I have like a productivity issue where I'm always producing. I don't ever like feel bad about not producing. You know, it's not like I punish myself if I don't get things done, but I like am always
nonstop.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I can feel it. I'm the same way. So routine is very important to me because I have animals' responsibilities.
Right.
These
reliant
animals,
on you.
very reliant, and I think that's what made me more structural.
Yeah,
more
that's cool.
pathway.
Mm-hmm.
When I met Richard, one of our mentors, the people that connected us, I was very offset, where I was stubborn, straight-forward-headed. I had nothing to develop with it myself. Very egoistic. It was very hard to actually talk to me because I thought I was over here.
Interesting.
Very hierarchy type of guy, and he taught me a lot. He brought me out of that bubble, took me on a couple rides, and investigating my own self. Gone to Mexico here and there, and he did put in a nice dent, to remember something of myself.
Cool.
But
we all need that like catalyst, some like reflection, either point or person, to be like, I don't know if what you're saying is true.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I don't know if who you think you are is actually who you are.
And he would question every single thing I would tell him.
Yeah.
Every single thing. He's always questioning me whether it's good or right or bad or wrong. And that's why I liked him.
Yeah.
Because whether you're on his side or not, he's still gonna hate you. He's still gonna love you.
He's like, I feel the same about you whether you make a change or you don't. You figure it out.
Asshole. So you have a routine, you have spiritual practices or spiritual techniques. Do you have a spiritual practice or a religious practice? So it's a two-part question, meaning your spirituality can be condensed into what your routine is, and your religious affairs with a religion as a standing, meaning do you communicate with Christianity, Buddhism, or any specific type of religion?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school my whole life. I think it was a way for my parents to feel okay about not taking care of us, because it wasn't like there's a bunch of Catholicism in their lives. It was just like Roman Catholic Italians trying to get you to just do what is like right, which
or you're going to hell.
You don't know. So that is, of course, part of me. I find comfort in churches. It's like the structure of like, okay, we're up, down, like whatever. Like there's something about the routine that is still very comfortable for me. I don't go to church when I'm in other countries. I do, just to like get better acquainted with like the language and things like that. But I also have a lot of Hindu practices, but as a white person and as a yoga person and a yoga educator, I wouldn't identify as a Hindu, even though I benefit from a lot of those practices. I'm not like teaching other people to do them, and I'm not like passing them on. They're just very personal. It's kind of like why I have a hard time being on Instagram and like sharing things on Instagram at this point in my practice and in my business, but a lot of my practice is because it's so personal to me that it is part of my spiritual practice. And in India, it's considered like the dirty part of your practice. It's like the cleansing techniques that you do. You wake up in the morning, you do your abhyanga, your nasya, your gandusha. You're just like putting oil in all your holes, and then you're cleaning yourself, and then you're doing your asana practice, and that's like part of the cleansing preparatory time of your day. And then here are all these people on the internet just like stretching on a screen, and it's like, that's not, so it's part of what Western yoga is doing to make money, I guess. But also it's interesting, the family that I work for in India is like, India is teaching the West about tech, and the West is teaching the East about yoga, which is not totally the case. It's just more so, there's a lot of, it's just whiteness at its finest. There's a lot of, there's a lot of like, that's why Bollywood exists, because they want to be Hollywood. There's a lot of this like adoption of white being better and like American culture being adopted. And like, if we look more American or do more American things, then we're going to be more lucrative or whatever it is.
Birth of generic branding.
Yeah. And so when you see Americans practicing yoga or asana, like you don't go to India and everyone in India is practicing asana. Everyone has a spiritual practice, whether you're Muslim or Hindu or whatever it is, Buddhist. You have that, like that is the yoga that they're doing that we don't get. The like asana on the screen stuff.
Because it's initiated sadhana, right? Where you have one practice.
Yeah, I guess like when you're born into something, you don't even question it so much. You're like, well, this is what we do, and so you're born with the knowledge and given the knowledge of creating your sadhana or going about sadhana with the guidance of whoever is teaching you about the gods or spirituality or existence, because existence and the gods are one and the same. They're because of the other, but your parents are not usually teaching you asana. That's something that was reserved for the boys and the Brahmin class, and females practicing asana didn't really even come until like in your baby, like this like rich French lady or something that was like, come on, let me do yoga, and then did it and brought it to the West or whatever. So that's the long and that's the short and short of it. But yeah, so there's like that kind of relationship that I have with spirituality or whatever it is. But I am really into connecting with my teachers who are no longer here. That includes my parents, but also includes Maharishi. It includes some of the my teachers that don't have faces or names yet, but are still giving me information, which is a spiritual practice. So
would you say like the practices that you're referring to, that you're tapping into these things with projections or astral projections, or these types of beings that are coming from another plane to give you information?
Yeah, so I actually sit, and I wouldn't say that I'm asking to project, or like I've been taught how to read the Akashic records and things like that, and that was really great for me, but didn't feel like my method of healing or offering healing for other people. So I still kind of sit in that space in hard moments. Like I sit and receive the wisdom from my teachers and my guides, and they also come to me in hard moments. So I'm not like using them necessarily, but they're showing up when I need them to. They're answering questions whether I ask them or not. And then sometimes they're just leaving it up to me, which is like also an answer, So yeah, I'm not using them to create necessarily. It's just a natural part of existing. Like anyone can do it if they slow down enough and listen enough.
It's quite interesting that you said that. Like I wasn't gonna take turn into that conversation, but Santeria or something that I practice.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're aware of it. There's a lot of things that our mentors or padrinos consider sacrilegious, kind of like what you're saying. If you're putting it on Instagram and telling other people about it, at that point it's sacrilegious to yourself. I'm not sure if it's some type of karmic thing that can affect you or something can come back to you, but that's what their belief is. So what she would practice with me, it was like more like you write it down in your book. I'm not going to give you a book to learn from. You're going to watch me, you're going to hear the mantras or the things that I'm practicing, and you're going to recite them, and it's all your rubric language. Like it's a dialect that you can only hear by vowels and sounds. Like it's not something that you write out and explain. You have to hear it and vibrate with it. And that's something that I felt like yourself, like I tapped into that point where I communicated with the out there, and it was fulfilling for me. But like you, it wasn't something that I felt like this is my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I want to continue to
Right.
do. It's more like I went there because I needed closure and like to push off, because it was more of these people were doing good for me, but they were more of doing bad for me. I'm not sure if it was because of the way they went or the way that it happened or the way that the teachers were trying to come to me.
Interesting. Yeah, everything's a catalyst for whatever, like, and you can take it and run with it or take it and leave it, because that's also a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And, we always say a yes to something is a no to something else, and vice versa. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that I've tried, Reiki master and all these fucking things that are like, I'm gonna figure it out. And I'm gonna
figure out.
I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna know everything and I'm gonna be enlightened, because when you start yoga, there's this like promise of enlightenment or something, right? If you start any sort of spiritual practice, whether it's in a religion or just in some sort of spirituality, there's some sort of promise of a bliss state or a bliss place or something, and it's a way almost to just keep you seeking. And if you have someone like Richard, or you have somebody that's kind of checking your ego all the time, if it's not yourself or your teachers, it's, somebody that is trying to just bump their bubble up against you in an effective way. When what it is that you're taking in is good for you and when it's not. It's not to say that whatever it is that you're practicing is wrong on its own. It's just like, that is also there. Okay. Moving on.
Next up.
Yeah.
I think I felt to the point of bliss, and I felt more connection on a psychedelic effect rather than practicing something ritual. Because it was more of the blissful high and then getting to the point. But the lessons as well were more intuitive and connected to my sensory organs, being my vision, my smell, and my taste. So I feel like because I had that connection with what I was feeling and receiving, I put it at a higher level than my spiritual cult or whatever, because I feel like I am the one doing it. And that just might be my ego talking
Sure.
humble, like wanting to represent myself as a humble person.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I don't know the depths of Santeria or, like some specifics to other, sects of organized spirituality, or, even like going to do ayahuasca or whatever it is, and like the kind of bastardization that has come about commercializing that. But I know we use these things, like I think mushrooms are going to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of fungi can clean our insane residues that we've created in this.
So that's a nugget. So you're saying fungi actually removes residue?
It eats it. It produces enzymes that eat the residue, literal, bacteria, or it is a bacteria, it is a fungi that can eat the toxins that we've created in this world. Like it is a pretty incredible thing itself.
Like a recyclable organism.
Yes. And when you eat it, it can do a similar way. It can produce these enzymes that can help you in digestion. It can, literally reroute your brain. But what I was getting to is that there's these things that we take in to help us do that. Because, in Ayurveda, there's these 5 principles, and your senses are part of the principles. Your mind is one of the principles. Your physiology is one of the principles. These are these things that we have that we can't get caught up in, but we need to use and cleanse and purify in order to find a clean physiology and a clean consciousness, which will give us optimal health. And Ayurveda is this ancient Indian science, Vedic science of a long life. And they talk about immortality in the way that you can live life as long as you want to, as long as you keep your physiology, your consciousness pure. And so while you're awakening these different parts of you, you start moving better, you start thinking better, you start seeing better. All of a sudden, you don't need glasses anymore. Your voice is more clear and pure. All those things start to happen. You can't attach to those things. They are part of the process of cleansing, and any sort of attachment produces resistance to that cleansing and to having a pure physiology of consciousness, you know? So anything along the way that is like making you grip to something where like, now I'm addicted to mushrooms because the only way that I can feel like I'm in a bliss state is to be high, you know? That's not it.
And that's the contradiction of, I had a group of friends that slowly but surely just faded away, but they introduced me into acid and other type of psychedelia, and I saw that where they were addicted to being high, to being in that blissful state.
Yeah.
But then I saw others that would use it and tap in, like myself. Like I'll tap in once a year or twice a year, you know. But it's something that I feel like I'm purging myself, because I myself, when I take mushrooms, I feel like I'm shitting out of every hole.
Yeah.
Like that's how
Total
I feel.
purge.
Yeah, and like I'm going into the restroom, and then when I come out of the restroom, I'm just blissful and happy.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, if I forget, like I can't really say anything about it because it's so hard to explain. With LSD, which was I want to say the beginning of where I kind of felt like I need to stop. Like I did it that time, and I never did it again because of what I saw. And I was looking at the screen, and I was watching the movie Alice in Wonderland.
Never a good idea.
And I started seeing just the
You're
road.
watching a movie about people on mushrooms on acid.
I just started seeing the road.
Yeah.
You know, take the road, it's easy and it's slow. Take the road, it's easy and it's slow. And I was like, oh shit, like
you're hyper focusing.
Yeah.
You're like, I gotta get out of here, but I can't. I'm just gotta take the road. Yeah.
And then on the news the next day, Donald Trump had said something about the pandemic. So we rushed on acid, high as hell, at 5 o'clock in the morning to get cans and dog food and stock up with toilet paper.
Really cramped your buzz, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that kind of, you know, you are supposed to have those types of experiences because you did, right? You chose to have them. So that was supposed to be part of your healing. And as well, to get into those states shouldn't be reliant on those things. And when you have like, you know, that is also you. Like the crazy manic you is also you. There's spectrums of us, right? When you see someone in front of you acting fucking crazy, you're like, that's also possible for me. You know, like we're all we're all just reflecting our own possibilities. But when you have these like signs of elation and like you're reaching higher states within or after usually, right, a mushroom trip, you're reconnecting neural pathways, or you're reconnecting more with your true nature outside of the habitual messed up things that our brain does for us because of circumstance and, you know, life. And the goal is to not forget who you are, like not forget the depths of your rightness or your godness or whatever it is you want to call it, your pureness. Because in Ayurveda we call it pragya aparad, which is the forgetting of your true nature. And when you forget your true nature, whether it's because you're eating the wrong things and you know it's bad for you, you're treating yourself poorly, you're not creating a routine, you're not, you know, giving yourself time alone or rest or movement or whatever it is, you are going against your nature. And so the more you know and the more you learn, and sometimes it's acid or mushrooms or whatever that teaches you more, if you forget that, then you're going more against your true nature, and your body will and your mind will go against you even harder. Because it's like, dude, you just did all that work and you learned all these things and you're still going to forget that, you know, we can be healthier, we can be better to ourselves. What, come on, you know? So it's that all these things we choose to do are ways to teach us something. And if we can keep those lessons as we continue, we can see growth. We can see change. But if we keep forgetting all the lessons, then, you know, we're just going to keep taking 2 steps forward, taking 5 steps back, which is a really challenging life to live.
And I see myself, I did that in the beginning, you know, and maybe I'm still doing it. You know, I'm not aware of it. Going forward and then coming back to the point where I met people in my life that taught me these things, and then I would pretty much say, fuck you, like whatever you taught me, because I did it to myself, whether if it's they introduced me to healthy ways of eating or the way of just developing or the teachings that my godmothers taught me.
Mm.
I might have done the same thing, but it's like, let's keep moving forward as well.
Yeah.
It's like a lesson within a lesson, I would say.
Right.
When you punch yourself back, and maybe you just need to be back for a little bit in order for you to realize it.
And can't pull forward.
So, how do you combine your work, school, spiritual practice, and achieve what you call not perfect balance as what other people represent, but what you call in your own perspective balance? So, how do you achieve all of that in your own balance?
It's taken a long time for me to accept the fact that balance will look different in different stages of my life. Like, I thought that practicing asana every day, like working on my spine every day, and eating or drinking juice every day, and like that was going to help me find balance. And I did that incessantly, which was not balance. I now, if I'm in school and I'm working and I'm trying to take care of my household and my health, I'm not going to be on my mat for 3.5 hours a day. Like sometimes just getting 20 minutes of movement down is my max, and I feel good. Getting meditation in every day and making sure that I am just ticking things off my list is enough. I don't need to overkill everything, but realizing this is why I don't make lists, because I will see it and I will try to check everything off before the day is over. Like, I can't do lists. Everyone's like, you just need to make a list. And I'm like, no. Like that's the most common thing that people recommend when you're trying to find balance or find some sort of like, organization in your business or whatever. And I'm just like, no, I trust that it will all get done.
And that's what I tell my spouse, and I'll fall for it, because she's like, you need to get organized.
Yeah.
You need to find a balance. Like, this is my balance.
Right?
I just need to finish that in 2 hours.
Right? There's this thing that exists in some of us that are used to thriving in chaos, that we get it done and we have this like mental checklist, and I get everything done and then some. So for me, it's just about making sure that I schedule in rest. And meditation, and knowing that I need a meditation practice helps me do that. So as long as it literally just gets done, and it's not like magical, it's a lot of work, but as long as I trust, and I have a tendency to fall towards a scarcity mentality where I'm like, okay, well, I didn't make any money today. I worked fucking 10 hours, but I actually made no money, so I need to like blah, blah, this like obsession of, and the habit that we've been forced into in like a capitalistic lifestyle is not effective to finding balance. Balance is this like act, right, that we're always kind of moving and undulating between. There's always going to be some sort of shift, and because my work is not steady, and I really only make money during like my busy time of the year, I have to self-soothe and trust a lot that things will just balance out. Like sometimes we're not thinking about money because we're in abundance, and sometimes we have abundance in different ways and not monetarily, and that needs to be celebrated. So I have to always kind of trick myself into being like, you're fine, like stop freaking out. My grandparents had 2 houses taken by the bank. There's like a lot of fear inside of me with growing up with abandonment issues, with growing up without parents and all that kind of stuff. So it's this kind of being like, hey, this is not the you that's existing right now that is afraid. This is the you that was a child and is now an adult that is freaking out. Just relax,
And it feels like a projection almost when you're saying that, like, oh, somebody's telling you to say this.
Right? Capitalistic society.
For real.
For
So you described your morning routine, and you said that sleep is important. So to me, I've always wanted to make a balance or an adjustment to it, because I can run off of 2 hours of sleep and I can run off of
For
8
now.
hours of sleep.
Yeah.
So it's very weird. Like I can sleep 8 hours one day out of the week, but the rest of the week I'll sleep 2-3 hours because I can't just sleep. It's so hard for me to just close my eyes.
What happens when your eyes close?
I don't know. Like I feel like it's not producing anything, so I can't stay quiet. Like I'll go lay down in my bedroom and then I'll say, okay, I need to finish this. So I'll wake up and then come back, lay down for 20 minutes.
It's tasks. It's not worry. So
So-
not like, you don't have anxiety.
I don't have anxiety at night. Sometimes when I don't feel comfortable, either my stomach or it's growling or something at night, then maybe that. Because I eat late, but other than that, it's just like I've never been able to keep a night schedule.
It's probably because you don't have routine in general. If you have an eating routine, you always finish your biggest meal between 10 and 2 when the sun is the highest, and then you finish your last meal 3 hours before you go to bed. Then your body is satiated, it's able to rest and not like being working on digesting food in the middle of the night or something like that. That's the start to give your digestion regularity. That'll help regulate your night, but also screens and things like that. Like you have to really train your circadian rhythm. So if you're taking in light when the sun is down, you're telling your circadian rhythm that it is light time. So it'll be harder for you to go to sleep. And then allowing yourself to kind of ride the wave of the day where like usually there's kind of a lull around 3, just naturally. That's why siestas are a thing. Like naturally the brain kind of takes a zoom around 3 o'clock, and then there's like a little bit of a upswing, but naturally we're like riding this wave down. And so if you have like coffee after 3 or stimulants after 3, that's going to block what's called adenosine, and that is what kind of builds up to guide you towards sleep. So you want to be guided towards sleep, and your resistance to the natural lulls in the day will make it harder for you to wind down when it's appropriate to go to sleep. So it's all about routine and light. Like if you, like when I'm jet lagged or something from travel and I get back and I wake up and I'm like, it's 3 o'clock. I'm not going to pick up my phone or even like check the time really because that's light. I'll go outside though and show my brain that it's dark. So I like walk around in the dark streets and then lie down again, not turning anything on, to just remind my brain when nighttime is.
Yeah, that's what I need to do.
Yeah. Sleep is hard, but it's really, really necessary because too, there's this thing that they call like sleep dirt in your brain that builds up, and they've found correlations of that. It cleanses in the night, like when you get full sleep, and they have correlations of like bad sleep and then not being cleansed from the brain and things like Alzheimer's and that kind of thing, Parkinson's, or so for brain health, you want that.
So, 1 second, let me see here what's going on. Yep, we had a couple of people comment there.
So, sorry to interrupt there,
No
but
worries.
you were saying that the visual of UV. So it's very important with the reptiles. Like we use UV a lot.
Yeah.
So I keep them up. My Asian water monitor has a night schedule because of Australia and other places around the country. So I
cool.
see those lights. So
Yeah.
it's like kind of be hard for me, but maybe if I follow that routine like my animals,
Yeah,
just set them on my end. You know?
that's so interesting. Yeah. You're like, all right, it's Australia there, it's Asia there. Where am I? Who's going to regulate my light for me?
That's where the wife comes. Shut up and go to sleep.
Yeah. Well done.
Okay, so we talked about catalysts, but I did want to ask this question. Describe a point in your career journey that marked a change, a difference that you felt lead you to somewhat of a clear path. So the catalyst that you said Gianna changed here.
Oh, there's been so many changes.
But it has to be the first one.
Yeah, I know. There were so many. And the first one I don't even think was significant because like I was doing hair, I was working in a salon, and I was like, I remember it was summer, and I lived in Chicago. From Chicago, it's like one of the 3 months out of the year where you just want to be outside. It's beautiful. And I had no clients this one day. And I was like, can I just go home? And they're like, no, you have to be here in case walk-ins come. And I was like, I'm not going to sit inside 7 days a week or 6 days a week. I worked at the salon and wait for somebody to hopefully come in so that I can make my money when it's beautiful outside and I'm doing nothing here. They don't like that. So there was that. I didn't get fired. But this realization of I was waiting to work, waiting to live my life on somebody else's timeline, basically, was not enough for me. I didn't care. I saved a shit ton of money when I was working at the salon. I was working at a huge salon in the city. Like, we were rolling. I never checked my bank. It was blissful. Never had that moment of like, okay, Gianna, relax. I was just like, whatever. And I quit and moved to India. I got rid of my shit and I just left. And I wasn't teaching yet, but I was learning. I had already been practicing for a couple of years. And I told my work that I needed to go and like do these things. I was like, I'm working at the Mother Teresa Foundation and I'm going to volunteer at this animal shelter. And they expected me to come back. And I showed up one day to just like say hi to everyone. And they asked me about my trip or whatever. And then that was the last time I walked in there. And I went to teacher training and studied with Bikram and then just kept studying. Went to the Pattabhi Joy School in Mysore, India. I studied with the Bihar School. I studied with some of the teachers in the States that have taught me and taught internationally over the years. And that I started with Bikram Yoga, which Bikram is a man from India who brought hot yoga to the States. It was the first hot yoga practice. It's hatha in a hot, humid room. He's canceled, doesn't live in the States anymore, went back to India, and sexual harassment, all that kind of stuff, which what happens when a Western philosophy or a Western-minded philosophy infiltrates with or intersects with power and money. There you go. And I learned a lot about how I was supposed to be in this framework. Bikram teachers tend to be very like kind of thing, and we were taught these poses that should be done in this way, and people just eat that up and make you do things. And so I was like, I don't know, I love not listening to people, so I would understand why someone would like just be like poking at a Bikram teacher because they want you to listen to them or something. So I would say my real transformation within the life that I'm living now and the life that I need to be living now came when my dad died in 2015, and 2 days later I got in a motorcycle accident and crushed my pelvis and didn't have my helmet on, smashed my face against the car. My wife at the time was on the back of my bike. This was in Chicago, and she was fine. And I was in the hospital, got surgery and all that kind of stuff. And I missed the wake for my dad, and he was like my dude. And they like wheeled me to the burial because they were like, I checked myself out early. I like wanted to make sure I had insurance at the time. I don't anymore. But I wanted to make sure that insurance was going to cover everything if I left early. And they were like, yeah, I guess, whatever. So I left, and they tried to get me to the wake. I couldn't get out of the car. I was in too much pain. I was like stuck. And then they were like, all right, everyone's going to start wheeling out of here. Go to the burial site. And so they like, across with a broken pelvis across the grass to where they were going to put my dad in. And it was a softening that I felt right away, like after certain, maybe I was high, I don't know, maybe I was like on a lot of morphine, but people were like, the doctor came in and was like, just so you know, you're in a bad accident, you might never walk again. And I was like, okay,
Shit.
what? And I like looked at my wife and I was like, can you tell this guy to leave? Because like, you don't get to tell me that I'm never going to walk again. I've never seen you before. You never even touched me. You don't know what is going on with my body. And people were visiting me and stuff, and there was just like a peace that I felt where I was like, everything is going to be okay. Like that, when you actually connect with that inner knowing in a moment of chaos, where like I just lost my only support system, like the healthy parent in my family that was supposed to be around forever died, and I just lost my body basically. And to find peace in that kind of chaos, I think was a big shift for me, where I don't know what the chaos that anyone is going in onto the mat is. And I don't want to help them even figure out that they're in chaos. I want to present teachings that are going to help them write the story that they need to write. And I don't care what story it is, whether it's like, in this lifetime, I need to make drugs. I need to just make drugs. It's my life passion, whatever. It's like, great, none of my business. But if you find some sort of peace in whatever it is that you're doing, as long as it's not hurting other people, making drugs is probably selling drugs, is probably hurting other people. But, if whatever you're doing is fueling for your life and creating a better good for you, I want what I am sharing to do that for you, because clearly it has helped me so far to do this now. And so that was really when I shifted out of asana obsession. I shifted out of really working on my social media stuff. I got a divorce a few years after that and realized I wasn't happy in my marriage. I moved back to Arizona. I lost my house. I lost my car. I had nothing. And it was the happiest I had ever been.
It's always losing something. It just strips you away.
Yeah, it makes you look at everything differently. When you, especially with you don't know your life ever without a parent. You're born because of them. They're there all the in different constructs. Some sort of parental figure, when you lose them, someone that's been there for you forever, you have to reevaluate who you are now without them. Especially if you're like, oh, I fucking am lost in it, before phones and shit. It was I'd call my dad all the time and be like, I'm at the corner of Belmont and Sheridan, fucking lost. How do I get to blah, blah, blah? And he would just give me directions through the stupid city that I'm from, that kind of thing where you're like, fuck, I'm lost and phones don't exist yet. How am I going to get home, or whatever it is, that kind of instinctual thing that you look for just basic support on a daily basis. When they're not there anymore, how you show up for yourself is telling as to how you're going to step forward in your future. If you don't show up for yourself and you just find someone else to fill that hole for you, you're probably not ready to create or write, or you're not actually writing your own future. You're just a circumstance to whatever it is that you stepped into.
I can relate a lot to those circumstances, but I'd like to ask this. So you're saying when we lose someone who we loved, or somebody who was close to us, but what if, this is the what if, if we ever not had that person to love, to have that affection, where you actually raise yourself as a child, because there's a lot of us out there, especially us entrepreneurs, where you practically raise yourself on your own.
Yeah.
And how would you explain that to them? When is it that their catalyst is coming, or did they create that at the point where their love was lost?
Right. Well, I don't think that you have to lose a loved one to have a catalyst. Mm-hmm. I also think that there is someone always that is important to someone, even if you raised yourself, and it might be you. And then the death of who you were in different parts of your life will turn you into something else, and there's something to mourn there. Say if you raised yourself, really it was just you, and you found community in drugs. And so drugs started to raise you. At some point, when you want to kick drugs, you have to kill the you and anything that is attached to the you that is drugs in order to not be drugs anymore. Because drugs raised you and you became drugs. And there's a death there to help you transform into the next rendition of who you are or who you're going to be. And so there's a friction point that you have to come up to. And just because it's not representative of the person by a person who actually birthed you into this world, it is still something you've known for the majority of your life sometimes at that point, right?
So the mourning of something is what pushes us to that greater knowing or that greater knowledge, you're saying?
I think it's friction itself.
It's friction.
Just itself. Because it doesn't have to be the death, say, or the mourning of it, like, how do I get over this, or whatever it is. It's any sort of burden or blockage that you come up to, how it is you show up, and how it is you learn from that thing or don't is going to be the catalyst for something. Might not be positive change. It might be just a lot of the same, but you're going to keep hitting that same block until you get it.
That makes sense. Even with people that you call acquaintances, those people become something of you because you're taking whatever they taught you. And like you said, the mourning, I think my catalyst would have been, I had issues with love, the people who were around me. They were always gone. There was nobody there.
Yeah.
So having affection to women was my wrong, where I was always wanting attention from women, wanting attention just from the opposite sex.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of the morbosity of what I thought it was. It was more because I felt like I had more connection with a woman than a man. Because I felt like my mother was never there. So
Right.
like when I went back there, I was like, oh, this guy was sad because he never had that
Yeah.
female affection.
Yeah, and if I get this, then I can feel loved, or
Exactly.
then I can accept myself.
Exactly.
It's outward validation.
And I pushed myself to the limit where I was like having redundant conversations with people where I thought I could help them as well because of what I went through. But in the opposite, I was hurting them by them falling in love, or vice versa. I was falling in love, and vice versa was happening, and it created something even more catastrophic for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's important to note. Like, okay, I'm creating this pattern for myself, but why? And how can I soothe that part of me, because it still lives there? Where it's like, okay, you were effective. You helped me feel love again. This part of me, thank you, but we don't need you anymore. I know how to feel love now, and I want to give it to myself. You take a seat, and we'll proceed without you. I'll let you know if I need to, because we are a product of our upbringing in so many ways, in most ways. And if you're never aware, if you don't actually take responsibility for the choices you're making and for the situations you're in, then, and there's plenty of us that end up in the situations we in, not because of our choices. Like, I didn't choose to be born to this person that didn't want me, or be born in this, like, it's just kind of, there's circumstances that don't equal out to this for sure. But there's also, if you're an adult and you're making choices based off of the child they're probably not going to be effective for your growth. And if you just keep saying, well, this is how I am, then you're not taking responsibility for who it is that what you were and how that is making you who you are.
Well, the only purpose of going back is because you want to fix it, and that's what people need to understand. You don't want to remember something just to be bad on yourself and put yourself down. It's more like, what are you going to do to hug him? What are you going to do to hug her? How is it that you're going to fix it?
Yeah.
And that's what I learned with all these relationships that I developed, unfortunately, in the bad way. But, that was my catalyst, to actually feel the loss of love that I was giving these people, because I was an asshole where I led you on and I just fell away because I took what I wanted and I wanted to an extent feel like I needed to betray or show some type of courage, to say, oh, I'm better than the love that I never received from my mother. Because that's the way I saw it.
Right. I still have to tell myself, like, no, you decided to show up here. Yeah. You wanted this person to love you because you love them, you can stay, because I was used to everyone leaving me, and now I'm like, well, I can just leave everyone. So I have to actually tell myself, like, you can't run after the highs. It's like people fall in love with the falling in love, and then they get addicted to that. And then when they're like, well, when I can't teach you anymore, and when I can't be, in this bliss state of love all the time, then I must go. Disappear into the darkness. But that's
Healthy.
That's not healthy, and that's not life. It's chasing the highs. And it's looking for some sort of outward satisfaction to let you know again that you're okay. Because when you hit something that's hard and you feel bad, and then you feel bad about yourself, it's not as good as feeling good and feeling high on endorphins and shit like that. Those things are powerful.
And addictive.
You have to be careful. Yeah, falling in love is...
So you can't just say the catalyst is losing, but also giving too much. Right?
And the catalyst is just friction. If you have the same thing happening to you all the time, the only similarity in all those situations is you. Mm-hmm. So if you never decide to meet yourself in those challenges and be like, all right, we gotta look at us, then you're never actually welcoming in the catalyst for change. Mm-hmm. You're just finding
a way to continue with the addiction.
Yeah, how can I be this way? I gotta go over here. That's why this is probably not good to say, but if I meet someone and they don't have any friends that they've had forever, 5 years or more, I have one of my friends who we don't talk all the time, but we're homies still. I know from 3. My whole friend group is not I don't know anyone from high school basically anymore, whatever it is. But if you keep meeting somebody that has no friends, or can't call up a homie from the past and then be there for that person, it's probably because they keep burning every bridge and acting out their habits, their bad habits, on another group of friends, on another group of friends, on another partners, other partners. And they just keep doing that over and over again until they have no more bridges to try and cross. It's very telling. That is, I'm sure, not the case for everyone, but I use it to vet my partners, and it's worked so far.
It's a good way to vet, because you can tell a lot from a person who has befriended or divorced their family. Per se, myself, I don't have any contact with my family, sure, but I still keep contact with humans that have met me in jail, that have met me throughout the years, because these people push me to become who I am. So they're kind of the way I see them. They're my stepping stones. Yeah. So now what can I offer from the good life that they have given me to make them feel better?
Yeah, and I think we have these people that I've spent probably 7 hours with this one person, and she's a friend of mine forever because of what she showed up as during that time. There's one time I was having a really bad mushroom trip. I was probably 22 or something, and Depeche Mode was playing. It was, in the middle of a concert, and she saw. I was like, I have to get out of here, and she just kissed me on the face and said, "Go." And I and I was like, okay, but she I don't know anything about her life, but she's such a positive glimmer in a hard moment, which is. That in itself is okay, that is what I want to be for people. The one guy that smiles at you in line when you're getting groceries or something, and he's not a total dick. When you're checking somebody out, working a service job, and the one person comes up and they're completely pleasant and thankful and joyful. Those tiniest of interactions to the biggest of interactions,
you just want to be the angel.
Can be positive. You don't have to tell someone to go out into the wilderness and live their fullest life, but just to be some sort of positivity in people's day is going to uplift your day as well. And if you're going to impact people all the time, you're just going to bump your bubble against everyone else's. Why not have it be a joyful and a pleasant, opportunity for them?
The other day, you surprisingly that you said that. I went to drop off my daughter, and I dropped her off on Uber. And the guy, when I came back in, looks at me and he says, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." And I was like, okay, like who do you talk to?
Right. Like high five. I don't know. Great.
Like
Thanks.
that was
How
the
do you know? Yeah.
only thing he said. No
Yeah.
conversation, no
Yeah.
nothing. And then when I left the car, he's like, "Have a blessed day." Nothing else to say. Very short, dude. But like, okay, Angel. Like, I know
Right.
those are the angels that come in and
There's
out.
so many of them.
And it's like shit. Like I'm surrounded.
Yeah, and we need those things to remind us that like we're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to be like, fuck, I'm not doing enough. Like, I don't know how I'm managing all these balls. They're all just going to fall at some point. But, like, you know, that reassurance that it's like,
Doing new things helps.
this is great. It does for sure. Yeah.
Let's go on to the next question. Why did you choose yoga, or did yoga choose you?
Honestly, I was in a bunch of back pain and joint pain from doing, like, wreaking havoc on my body from a young age and on, and then standing in heels and stuff like that behind the chair doing hair. And one of my clients was just like, you should go up the street to this yoga. So, you know, she was the little birdie that came and delivered that message. But it could have been anything else, you know, people get into CrossFit or whatever it is. It was just I was ready for something more. Yeah.
And yoga happened to be that many.
Yeah.
So it was you just
It was
making that decision.
circumstantial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I feel lucky.
Did you have a particular line of business prior to becoming independent? Meaning, you did explain that you did hair or hair salon.
Mm-hmm.
So before you did that, because that's some type of dependency. Some people are barbers. Some people call themselves independent contractors. Before the hairstylist, before the yoga, was there something that you did, like a cashier or something else, or something that you found yourself doing again and again and again?
So I finished beauty school and high school at the same time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I started working in the salon at 18. And then before that, I did everything from like summer jobs of filing things for offices to coaching gymnastics and running parties for kids and things like that. So I had this is where like my privilege is like very great, where I just had a lot of ins. I did gymnastics as a kid. And so when I was 15, I just started doing these parties for kids. And then when I needed I'm from Chicago. My dad grew up in Chicago. He's got 10 siblings. They're all of them were in Chicago. Like I never had a hard time finding work in a pinch or temporary work or, you know, kind of odd jobs. But my job as a kid was gymnastics. I was there 5 days a week for 4 hours a day.
Because you wanted it, or is it something that your parents put onto you?
Because I was so unruly, they needed to wear me out so that I would go to sleep at night. So when I was 3, they put me in gymnastics.
Wow, that's my daughter. And that's what my wife says sometimes. We need to put her in gymnastics. Like, she's very wild out there, just out there. And that's how I was, I think.
Yeah.
When I was a child.
You need an outlet.
Yeah.
And when it's something that is positive, where you can like understand your body and play with shapes and stuff, it becomes very stimulating for me. Like that's the only time I was focused, to like be on a balance beam and do a backflip or a flip flop or whatever it is. Like you can't be anywhere else. And that was my version of focus at the time. Otherwise, there wasn't a lot of it.
So you did jack of all trades before you went into hair salon to yoga, right? Those were your 3 career paths, or
Basically.
2 career paths to your freedom.
Yeah, I had an Etsy site.
An Etsy site?
Yeah,
Back in the day, or this is recent?
back in the day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, probably 2006 to 2008.
Oh, so you're the Kickstarters.
Back in the day when there was no social media, we just put it on Etsy.
Etsy and emails.
Yeah. Give you a flyer, a paper flyer.
Wow. That sounds interesting.
It's like, here, you throw this out.
There's no SRQ. You have to type it in.
Yeah. You have to guess where this location is.
So, did you have a beginning or somewhere where you started along the line back in the day making jewelry, or did this just come into play as an independent
Yeah,
person?
so that's what the Etsy site was. I actually did roadkill art, basically.
So taxidermy?
Yeah, and it was all found. It was just funny because I was vegan at the time. But I would use all their bones for earrings and rings and plugs and jewelry, things like that. So that was what I first started doing. And I went to college for a short amount of time for audio engineering. And I went to Columbia College of Chicago, which is like a big art school. And I knew I was going to go there. So not only did I manipulate my stupid Catholic school into letting me leave halfway through the day to go to beauty school, first and last person to do that there, but I also told them that I didn't need to take all these other classes. I could just take all the art classes because I'm going to art school. So I took every art class that was offered. Which was a lot at the time.
You're going to hell, or if you don't allow Gianna.
I don't know what it is, but like I'm very convincing, and adults liked me when I was a child. I don't know if it was because I was kind of snarky and like had a good sarcastic sense of humor, and I was like that kind of smart where you're like, when you're an adult, this person's gonna be in trouble. I just like got along with adults. Kids my age were annoying to me, which is probably a sign of something. But I turned that fine. But that was like all I did. So I was doing photography constantly. I was always in the dark room. I had an art teacher that introduced me to metal and jewelry making, sculpting. And so I got really into that. And I was minoring, and I was getting a major in audio engineering and minoring in photography, and had a mental breakdown and dropped out of school. Like, went to school one day, it was on fire, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I quit and got the job at the salon and was making jewelry, and moved into a camper with my bandmate, and that accessibility to, we were in the camper for like 2 years, that accessibility to some of my tools and stuff made it harder to do. So I kind of took a break from it for a while, and then moved to Austin, was doing it again, took a break from it. And now I just feel like I have more of the space and the need for that, because I'm not addicted to asana, which I was for the first like 7 years of my yoga practice, where it was like all my creative energy was going to that, and creating new shapes and exploring my body. And then now I feel like I have a lot of creative inspiration around me. I'm doing more music again. I'm doing more jewelry, and it's like just all kind of coming together. Even like creating herbal remedies and things, but based off of Ayurvedic wisdom, is all kind of like, just it's all packing up into a nice package.
That's good.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely growing.
Always.
Everything.
I need a lot of stimulation.
Really? Would you
I
like
just
some
need
stimulants?
to be. It's all you. I just like always have to be creating something. I can't have just one job. Like, it's never going to be my path. So it's.
Amen.
It's
not the only person that I heard say that. I say that myself, and
Yeah.
I tell that to my spouse, and she's kind of stuck in the route right now. We both work online, and she's very sick of being stuck with the conversations. She finds herself very into the conversation, like it's happening to her, rather than it's just happening for a moment and on to the next person.
Yeah.
But I understand that we've done it for like almost 5 years. She's going on 6 with that company, so it's like it becomes a breaking point where she wants to grow and push on to the next thing, but she feels like she can't. She doesn't have the wisdom, or she doesn't find the push because she's not encouraged. And I can't encourage her, because the same thing, like as you might see, like having a loved one we're the last person to tell them what to do, or the last person that we should be telling them what to do. It's more like they have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, but it sounds like she is getting the push, and like the wisdom is what is interrupting her contentment in the situation she is. So she is being asked to step forward into something new. It's just like a leap that you have to take.
That leap of faith,
Yeah.
we all just need to take it at one point.
At some point, yeah. It's awful. But it is scary.
And sometimes we just need to step back and feel comfortable at it. Sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, enjoy what we have. Kind of ride the wave.
But never settle.
Never settle. Contentment is different. You can have contentment in anything you're doing, even if you're not settled.
Explain.
So contentment is like such a word that I think is like a stigma to American culture, where it's like you should never be content, always strive for more. And it's like if you don't find contentment in everything you're doing, you will hate everything you're doing and never be at ease. Even if you know like this is temporary, but I'm content in this phase of my life. I know I will do something else later, but this is good for now. It's just like an ease that you have no matter what the thing you're doing is.
It's more of a self-soothing practice rather than a sentence.
Yeah, or accepting the space that you're in and just allowing you to feel whole within any job you're doing, whether you're shining shoes or managing a company. You are a whole person. Yeah.
I think I felt that from my grandfather, as that he would represent that, and I would strive for that sense of happiness that urges with just a stranger.
Yeah.
It's just sent to move with him, and it was because he was always smiling with whatever he did.
Yeah.
He just carried himself with everything, whether if he's washing the toilet or doing some job or anything. He was always just whistling and a happy person.
Amazing.
Because it was just so much of what he endured as a child.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and I wish we would have endured that, because it might have put us at the same level of those people.
Sure, but he went through it so that he could teach you what happiness looked like, and then you can embody that as inspiration.
To an extent, because he pushed his ways on me. He was a wrought iron worker, and
Cool.
I had learned to grind and weld at the age of 12. So it's a very iron worker, man, and it was kind of hard to move him from his structural ways.
Mm-hmm.
So he had beans on Sunday, and it had to be that.
Yeah. When you continue in the same, you seek more of the same. And any disruption of the same is, and it's not even just like an inability. You think like, oh, he just is set in his ways. It's like your brain is so set in your way that way. And like taking even another route home is like impossible for the brain. You need to like soften your frontal lobe,
Yeah.
It starts to calcify. You have
It's
to,
crazy.
the fluidity of life can show up in the physical body so that it influences fluidity in the mind.
I didn't learn that until I met water. And what I mean by that is like we don't actually value the power of water until we study it. Until I found water, that's where I was. And then talking about the love or the loss of love. The loss of love was what led me to the water. And what I mean by that is my godmother, who brought me into Santeria. She left to Pennsylvania without telling anybody, and she left me all her stuff and her saints and everything. I was like, oh shit, like, is she dying? What's going on?
Right.
And she's not telling me anything. She did have medical problems, but she just left out of the blue. And to me, it was like I was depressed in a moment. Like, how am I going to live today? Like, what am I supposed to do with these things? Like, I don't have the power that she has. Like, I had commended her to like this idol. But when she left, she was the one who brought me to Oshun, or the water. And that's where I found fluidity, where I found to be just chill and relax. And she, out of nowhere, slapped me in the face or do just random things to just make me think, like, wake up. And she would do these things out of the blue, but it had a sense, kind of like the way you explain yourself and your way of being.
Yeah, and even her leaving was like a good slap in the face.
Yeah.
Probably too.
Yeah.
Hey, wake up, bye.
And she left.
Figure it out.
She left because of what she was going through in her life. She had issues with her son, and her son was just trying to take advantage of her mother. Sadly, she got, screwed over with her own family, and now she's back. But it hurt me to the point where, like, why didn't you tell me you were leaving? what was the plan? Like, when were you going to tell me this?
Right.
I would take her to her visits for her doctor. Like, it was a routine with us, like we had developed.
Yeah.
But she needed to break that routine without her knowing.
Right.
Like you're saying, soften the
Mhm.
frontal cortex on the low.
Making a new decision. Yeah.
So, do you consider something or someone in your life, it could be an animal, it could be a human, as an inspiration? Or do you not idolize anything?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to think.
Yeah, I used to be really into idols. Just as like a way to align myself with the consciousness of something else. You know, like, all right, I'm really into Shiva consciousness. I'm going to align myself with this god or deity. And I don't do that as much anymore. And I think my dad was a big inspiration to me because I watched him with my mom, who, had dementia, was in a wheelchair, and by the end of her life, we were just like moving this log meat sack around, and it was like, all right, this is relentless. But I wish he let us in on a little more. Now that I talk to like my aunts and uncles and stuff, I've gotten a little more of like the truth of the story. But I never saw him be mean to her. And she was very not nice for a lot of the start of her disease. She was mean. She was aggressive. She was just really not a nice person. And before that, she was. And I was a teen. I was 12 or 13 when things started getting really bad. And so I didn't know that was going on. Nobody actually sat us down and was like, just so you know, your mom has Huntington's disease and this is how it's going to go. We just like, I don't even know how we found out. She just started telling everyone, and I guess we were like part of that. But there was never this like, okay, kids, like this is what's up with mom, or we just kind of like accepted what was thrown at us all the time. And I have pictures of like up until he had ALS, and he had like a breathing machine, always had a mask on to keep him breathing, and he was mentally there, but he was just enduring his body dying. Whereas my mom was not mentally there and her body was dying. So I have this picture of them both on the couch, and he like moved from his chair to go sit next to her. And I have another picture of them. My dad was still well, and he was dancing with her in her wheelchair. And there's just that kind of resilience. Because that shit, like that keeps me from having kids, where I'm like, I don't know what that is going to do or be, or if it's going to be healthy or not, or, if I'm going to have to take care of you forever. Like, I don't know if I'm that good of a person, And when you see somebody do that, when you actually see that it's possible, you remember that it's possible in you as well. All these people are mirrors of us. And so I guess that's my most tangible vision of inspiration.
Is it the motherhood, or the fact of what the happening is in other people that makes you happy?
It's more of like my dad is inspiring to me because I know the circumstance and I was in the circumstance, right? Mm-hmm. But what the inspiration is itself is, it's kind of just that people are resilient and can find joy, even from an outside, seemingly really sad and unfortunate situation. Because when I think of the way people came up to me when my mom ended up dying after my dad, which is the craziest thing, but when people came up to me at that funeral and they were just like really dumbfounded by how tragic my circumstance was, or my life was, or that life was. It wasn't for me. Even though it was really hard and challenging, and it's made me shitty in certain ways and great in other ways, there was a lot of joy found in those moments and in that house. And my dad made everything light, and it's why I make fun, like fun, everything's funny to me, which is challenging for other people. But like, if you lose your sense of humor, then we've got a problem, you know?
You lost your fanatic at that point.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like, I think the ability to find joy in any circumstance is like really inspiring.
That's what inspired me from my grandfather. I would say that he would be your dad, you know, in the representation, because of what he went through, the endurance he had to still laugh and be happy about it. This was a guy who was raised in the era of like carrying sacks of rice in his back.
Right.
Like he went through it,
Yeah.
and like no parents, no guidance or anything. But how did he make it to bring his disabled daughter? Because that was the reason that they came to America.
Yeah.
He had to become something in order to bring his daughter to come and get medication over the States.
Yeah.
So it was all just set in stone for him. Like there was no like, this is my dream, I'm going to do this on the side and this and that. No, like he had to focus on his work, to just focus on the pinpoint things he had to do for his family.
Yeah.
So there wasn't just him involved. It was more like everybody, everything around him. To not just his family, but like his workers, his employees. He was betrayed by his employees in Mexico, but it was like things that he was still happy to be in. Like he was still laughing about it.
Yeah, the resilience of humans is so interesting. It's really fascinating.
It is. It is. It really depends on the, like you say, the push and how far that bubble can be popped or become stronger.
Right.
Let me turn off this air. It's really cold.
The chili?
Let's see. So he was your inspiration or your aspiration in life as well. What spiritual techniques have you been aware of that you use on a daily basis? Maybe not a daily basis, but you remember like you've done this since you were a child. Like this is something that might be a mannerism or it might be a tactic that you used to just
Self-soothe?
Yeah.
I'd go upside down.
Really?
Yeah, we had this like ceiling in our house. I was little, maybe like 4. And I would stand on my head against the wall and I would look up at the ceiling and I would imagine just how fun it would be to just walk on the ceiling, because it was like down, low, pitched, it was bizarre. And it was what felt like hours of my day where I would just be on my head and imagining doing something that I couldn't do. And I still do that.
You do that in your mind, or do you actually physically just like, hey, I'm
Both.
gonna walk? Oh, that's cool.
I get upside down, and sometimes I'll like be doing also a demonstration or something, and I'll be like, oh, I can only do that in my mind. I can't do that in real life. I forgot.
We can't fly yet. That's cool. So, do you find that is something that, like you said, as a child you did, but has expanded your creativity, not only as a mannerism or a tactic, but has it pushed you to something bigger to use in your creativity or your thought process?
Well, we call it perspective changing. You know, like you turn yourself upside down, and now you got to see the world upside down. And so I think I do that a lot. In certain challenges and things like that, flip it around, and that helps me see something that I didn't see before. So it's a problem solving technique and a creativity thing. Yeah.
I find myself doing that a lot, and it's really hard for me to concentrate in one thing because of I don't know if it's my thought process or how I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I tend to be like, if I flip it this way, but wait, hold on, there's a different perspective, homie. You're forgetting about this way. So
Mhm.
my mind just constantly creates this like circle of thought.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier for you to see things from other people's shoes and, all of that. Like, if we only think the way we think and we think that that's the only way, we're going to meet a lot of blockages and challenges in time.
And you can only gain that by experience, because if you're not aware of those situations or those shoes, because you can only feel those shoes or that experience if you actually felt it. It's not like saying you fell, you broke your pelvis. I've never done that. I can talk about it, but I've never actually felt it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I was talking to this girl and she's like 25 or something. And she was like talking about how certain she was compared to this other person. And I was like, you are certain now. But when you have another 10 years of experience existing,
you'll be like, that person was a fool.
you're gonna be like, that dumbass had no experience. I'm getting it now. It's this like slow. That's why hindsight is 20/20. Like, you think you're so like you've got it, or you're so smart, or whatever it is at some point in your life, and then you have another one of those points where you're like, that wasn't it.
But what if you can leave those points and be like, I'm always stupid. Like, I'm so dumb. I'm gullible.
Well, I think when you have an excitement for what you'll know in the future, that's like a healthier way, where it's like, I know so much more now on the other side of like getting to the latter years of my 30s than I did in my early 30s and in my late 20s. And I can't wait to be on the other side, like be halfway and then some through my 40s, because there's going to be such wisdom to gain from there, So it naturally, the more life experience you get and the more you are interested in life, because if you lose your spark at some point, then like all you're going to do is dread being 45 or whatever it is. You always know you're going to be better in some way, as long as you're interested in growth.
I think the question that I asked was a little bit placed wrong, but what I meant was like, I know you don't lose the aspiration, but pushing towards it at a point in life, like, how is it that one, like you said, you lose your spark, but you can't lose it if you're thinking positive, like you're looking forward to the wisdom. So to my perspective, how I think about it, so you're addicted to wisdom, or is it that you think that wisdom is the higher chance of evolution, or is that how you look as transcendence? Like, what is your inspiration in it?
I don't know. Like, it's like a chicken or egg thing.
Like, what came first?
Yeah, because I don't like to be addicted to anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't help but do certain things, like be interested in my spiritual
because
growth
it's
or
instinctual.
my mental growth. Yeah, it feels beyond an addiction. It feels like who I am. And some people don't have that growth. Some people will get like some sort of new lesson, like they discovered something about themselves, and they'll just obsess over it, which I don't think is healthy, because then you welcomed in a new wisdom and then you stopped by obsessing over that one thing, that one wisdom nugget, instead of living from that wisdom, It's
almost like the numeration synchronicity. When you stop and say, 11:11.
Yeah, right.
It's the same thing. Like, you're stopping to pay attention
and
to
then
something
move on.
so minimal.
Don't start writing a bunch of numbers on the wall and get all fucking wild about it. Like, you gotta like, okay, thank you, angels, moving on.
Yeah. It's not like, I'm going to talk to my loved one about it, or do this and this and that. But you're stopping your life, like you said.
Yeah.
You're absorbing it so much, and it becomes,
Pause.
it becomes a rupture in your bubble, maybe? Does it become some type of bad situation in your ongoing, or does it affect you in any way when you grab onto something so much? Or is it just the addiction that it becomes an addiction at that point?
I don't think so. I don't think I don't think it ruptures your bubble. It just stunts your growth.
And you're back 5 steps.
Yeah. It's like, all right, how long are you going to sit there? Good luck. See you on the other side.
See you in hell. So is there any tactics that you sell a course to or you hide from the public but are aware of that you would like to share?
That's a fun question. Is there anything you're hiding right now?
Exactly.
What are you sitting on?
It's a whoopee cushion.
I share most everything I've been gifted because all the knowledge that I've been gifted is simply that, a gift. And those are meant to be given. So I make sure that I put everything out there.
So you're not sadistic and just doing it for love
I'm
or
not a
money.
sick freak. Yeah, no. And I encourage people to do the same. Like I was talking to someone today and she's like, listen, I have to be honest with you. I'm doing a Bikram training, which like, whatever drama around that. But it's like new teachers become studio owners and then they need to run their business. So they hold trainings, and it's not necessarily a good time for them to hold trainings because they're baby yogis and whatever. And I'm just like, great, glad for you. You know, I hope it works out great. I hope your students get what they need. And that's enough, you know, whereas I had a teacher who I don't see anymore because she was mean. Basically, it was like, who do you think you are doing this, blah, 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 to everyone. Or, wow, you look like shit now, like trying to... There was one time where she was like, we're like, listen, why don't you just accept who you are and what you look like now instead of always trying to like lose weight and get back to being in some sort of shape that you think you need to be in. And she was like, because I'm better than you, which we like so many of us started laughing, I think, because like, what else are you going to do in that moment? But like, not the point. Literally not the point. You want to lose weight because you need to show us that you're better than us? Yeah. The best teachers make students who are better than them. Like, let your people that have learned something from you go so far down that rabbit hole that they know more than you in it, and they can teach you something one day. And if you can't do that as a teacher, then get out of there, you know? So yeah, I don't hoard my knowledge at all. And sharing it helps me learn it and use it, you know? So I try to, if I'm going to teach something, I always honor the people that I've learned it from. I always make sure that I'm giving back monetarily because that's what matters. In a capitalistic society, I always make sure that I'm paying my dues. But I don't claim the knowledge as my own because it's not. That's like some sick shit. Because you're saying that you're larger than that what was given to you at that point, right? I'm saying that the knowledge is something on its own and no one owns it, especially like in Ayurveda, right? It's like everything around you, nobody owns anything. Right. It's funny that we think we do. We don't. And that's what makes everything a situation. The fact that we have a power over that, whether if it's I have my seat on the right hand side and you sit over there because that's your seat. Yeah. That's putting a sense of ownership over the thoughts of. It's the same with the kid. It's going back to the kid conversation, right? It's like, this is my kid. They're going to do what I say. And it's like, you know, that I'm big, you're small, blah, 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 blah. And it's just we're just a bunch of, if you think about us at the simplest way, just like matter pushing against matter and consciousness bunching against consciousness. I love seeing it in the micro way. Yeah. Like it makes more sense because like us cells do these things as we interact and grow and strengthen themselves. Like you were explaining the pupaing stage, like how a pupae comes out. Right. Well, they develop it into something beautiful, but it takes a lot of stress and push. Right. That's what cells do. That's what we are. Yeah. And if you think of mushrooms, it's like all that needs to happen for mycelia to fruit is a change in environment. And it's like all we need to do to grow is to change our perspective. And if you're resisting the reality of what's in front of you, you aren't going to grow. You know, it's like this is a consciousness and a tiny person talking to me, just a consciousness too, but like a bigger person. And we're just like simply, wow, you know, like the simplicity of it. That could just be a cartoon. Yeah, right. Clip. the simplicity of us really takes the weight off of the heaviness that resistance creates.
So you're not hoarding your knowledge.
No, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. That's the way I see it in the reptile community. It's really hard to breed reptiles.
Is it?
They say. But in reality, you need a male and a female, but
It's
raising good
biology.
temperatures and the way that they are in their husbandry,
Yeah.
meaning that a certain animal will react in Australia a certain way. We have to keep certain temperatures.
Yeah.
So what they hide is what temperatures do you drop them inside of Arizona, or what
Oh,
temperatures do
interesting.
you drop in Texas? Like
Yeah.
that's what they hoard. They hoard this knowledge of knowing
Yeah.
when the temperature drop is, or when they should put the female with the male. Like they don't want to share it because they know that this guy who's nobody's going to make a breedable sale, and they're going to overtake their clients. When in reality, there's so many clients in the reptile world that we shouldn't be doing that.
And they're so, I don't know, when we see everyone who is in the same community as us as competition,
Mhm.
then we're not actually going to grow our community.
And if they look at the top heads, like the people who call themselves the representation of who we are, they share.
Yeah.
They don't just hide their knowledge. They share
Right.
it.
How did you get there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's guys that actually debunk these rules and things. Like you just need to take the loop and go down the rabbit hole to understand it.
Right.
But I wish it could make it easier. And that's what we're trying to do, to the fact where we can make it easier for others.
Yeah.
It really is just put a female and a male together.
I love it.
And allow it to happen.
Yeah, it's like breeding rabbits. Really not hard.
Not hard at all. It's more of, I think, and this is what I wanted to ask you. I think the perception of you putting so much attention into something makes it reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you are thinking and saying, this is not going to work because I read it in the book and it's going to say that it's not going to work. So it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So you're putting that into existence to a point.
Right.
Do you think that that's real, or is that something that just made up into our spiritual culture of this era?
I don't know. I was having this conversation with my partner because she was like, I don't think you understand how much this happens to me. Like, I made this exact money and then this thing happened, and because the car is broken, now I got a bill for that exact money. Like this happens to me all the time. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like,
let it be, ma'am.
yeah, right? Like it just kind of had something happened and then something happened. I don't know if that's, I'm not the type of person that puts a bunch of weight on stuff like that, but I don't know. I think I just live in a different place in my mind or something. I'm sure that's true for a lot of people. I know affirmations work for a lot of people where they repeat this thing and like fake it till you make it type of thing, I am love, even though you feel like trash. You're like, love isn't trash, so I'm not love. Wait, no, I'm love. Or whatever it is. I've never gotten into affirmations. I love mantra, but like you're not gifted the meaning of mantra before you do the mantra. The mantra's meaning reveals itself to you. And I feel like that's more of the way that I live my life, where like the weight of things or whatever it is that I tell myself, or it just kind of like unfolds instead of me implementing it. And I've had to do work to like get places. Like I've had to be like, all right, we're going to write this story. Like, let's put a picture of this car on the mantle. Come on, car, or whatever it is, like let's manifest something. Sure. But I don't live my life by those things. I'm sure people would like that to be the case, but that's not my fancy.
So it's a good way to start the practice. Like forget about the little things. It's like we were going back to the enumeration thing. It's like the same thing. If you look at it, like you see synchronicity, stop looking at the smaller things and just focus on the larger picture.
I mean, I love that stuff. Like synchronicities are cool. I often think of someone and they call me, or those types of things happen constantly when you're tapped in.
But like you're saying, it's like you should be aware to use them as it's a yes from the universe, but not vocalize it to make it something bigger than it shouldn't be.
The obsession over it, I think, is not necessary.
Mm-hmm. Like, for example, my dog passed away when my daughter was being born, my second daughter. She was half English Bulldog, half Basset Hound. Mm. And we were heading to a doctor's appointment. She runs out the door and she gets run over by a car.
Oh, my God.
right on the head. It was a horrible scene.
Oh
my
my
wife was
God.
pregnant.
No, that's
She's
traumatic.
like, "You fucking bitch! You're running in front of my dog." Like,
Yeah.
She was like pregnant. Like, "You're gonna pop the baby out. Chill
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Hold on."
Hold on. Keep that thing in there.
Yeah. So we took her to the hospital. They put her down,
Yeah.
and we took her to Pima first because we were kids at the time. We're like, we can't afford that bill, like the surgery and everything.
Yeah.
And then they told us they're going to put her down. So I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? We're going to take her down. We want her ration.
Yeah,
We took her down. So we had like, I want to say like $800 in the account. And it was like $490 something. It was like $600 total.
Yeah.
So we were short on baby food and some other stuff. So we just paid it off and whatever. I went walking that same day, and down the street on the left-hand side of where the neighbors were at, as I was looking through the grass, there's a $5 bill. So I'm like, okay, cool, $5. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
I buy a lottery ticket. $496 after tax is what I got. Exactly what I paid for my dog's funeral or cremation.
I love it.
I was like, holy shit, like, this is a synchronicity.
Yeah,
I
right?
was like, just shut up and don't talk about it.
Let them keep coming. Abundance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you used the $5 instead of being like, all right, well, I better fucking hoard this because you like funneled it into the circulation of flow.
Because I was like, what is $5 going to do right now?
Yeah, no
I was like,
shit,
lottery
right.
ticket, let's become millionaires today.
That's sick.
And she was like, shut up about my bill and here's your money back.
Yeah, that's so cool.
From my dog.
Yeah, wow.
And it was love that I felt, like, not because of the monetary thing, but it was like, okay, she's watching.
Yeah.
She's looking over
Yeah.
us.
It's amazing how support shows up.
And
Doesn't matter
it clicked more because the first time I was read in Santeria, they read you with shells, and there's an oracle system.
Okay.
My godmother told me that if there was a dog in front of me that would always clean my path, and that was my dog Jasper, that grew up with Chloe, the one I was run over, and he was deaf, so he knew sign language, and like she was the ears to him.
Wow.
So like when she passed away and he was no longer there, like her previous owner had her because we had given him up. We were just moving from one house to another, and out of nowhere, when she had passed away months after, they're like, "Hey, we have Jasper here at Pima. Are you the owner?" And I guess they had already contacted the previous owner, the first owner, and he ended up in his first family. So the dog that I had, adopted from the society, came back to the first owner that he ever had, the one who had him as a puppy.
Wow.
So it was like just this big energy thing with animals and dogs.
It's really cool.
That's why the George of the jungle.
Yeah.
Animals have always been there. So, on to animals. Do you know of any animal that you find resemblance or attributes in yourself? Meaning that there's something that you just say like, "Oh, this is me because it looks cool," or because this lion's a bad motherfucker and this is who I am.
Yeah. So I have some like weird memories of being a wolf in a past life, and like a lone, like not a pack wolf, which is interesting.
Like a solitary wolf.
Yeah, like a lone wolf. And I have that feeling a lot as a human. I love partnership, but I can't do like the traditional partnership because I need so much self-exploration, which is interrupted by like a fully partnered life. And what's weird is like cats really never liked me. I have a cat, but they always were afraid of me for no reason. And it's almost like my smell or something. And they'd be like, this is a predator for sure. But the more I kind of understood like wolf energy and dog energy, like I grew up with dogs, never had cats. I got a cat just because I found one. And I don't know why I know why I have cats now. It's because of the independence. But I think a lot of it stems from this like strange memory and vivid imagery that I've had of being this like solitary warrior that's like watching from afar, but not actually.
Fine.
Yeah. And it happens too in like friend groups. Like I skirt the outsides of groups of friends all the time. Like people know who I am, watching you, show up when you need me, making sure you know I love you, but never like in the group of friends. I'm just kind of always on the outsides of things.
I've always paid attention to that observer.
Yeah.
I feel
I've
like,
been an observer. That's been the description of me since I was like 2.
really,
Mm-hmm.
because it's that person who watches over that teaches you more than anybody else. Because I was the person that walked in the room, and not to be egoistic and enlarge myself, but I walked in the room and there was always just light. And people always crowded around. That's always been my vibration. But I always tend to cling on to the people that are outside of the bubble. Like, I like your attention because you're not showing me that clinginess, or I just like to the outsider. And I've always been like that. So that might be it. You know. What is your favorite animal besides your representation of the wolf?
My favorite animal is probably the snake.
Really?
I just think that they're the fluidity at which they move and the quickness at which they strike is there's like something that is not intimidating but is like lesson giving, you know? And I've been bit by snakes before, and I had snakes as kids. We had a lot of our house was snakes ago. And I just always, I don't know, I love them in like a non-disruptive way, which like if this was me probably like 15 years ago, I would have been like, I love bunnies. And I love them in a very aggressive way. I was like, why are you so cute? But yeah, there's like a respect that I feel for snakes, and it's like a very mutual thing almost.
I think I've met energy, or I understood. I'm not saying I fully understand it, but I kind of merged with energy when I found reptiles because it's like it's my language. I like the way they move, the fluidity, like you're saying, but their attention to detail, their attention to just everything around them. And let me bring up one of the snakes. Sorry that I'm moving out.
Who do we get to see?
So you can see a snake.
Watch it bite me on camera.
This is what they call a false water cobra.
False?
Yeah. So it's a water snake, but it's called a false water cobra because it hoods up its neck like that.
Wow.
But the inquisitiveness of this animal is insane. And it's the same type of mannerism that they have. You know, they study everything in front of them and behind them without them, you know, being aware of them. But you can tell by just touching them, you know, like they're reactive to it. And that's what you mean. Like, I understand, like there's some type of energy that you understand with the animals you respect,
right?
Because that they have a higher understanding than you.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of, it's so interesting to think about, like, what would I instinctually be doing instead of what am I overthinking and trying to do? And there's like so many lessons in watching an animal in their, like there's a breath technique that we do that is based off of watching animals in their, after a disturbing moment, like after they've escaped being eaten or something like that, where they shake and they do this breath thing and to like release the trauma of the thing that had just happened to them. And so that kind of like wisdom is given to us because naturally you might feel like you're really shaky after a really like jarring thing where all the adrenaline's running through your body, but we don't walk into it. We don't like allow the shaking to continue. We like try to get everything back together and like get our shit together and blah 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 or whatever it is, instead of being like, okay,
And that happened to me in jail, what you're just explaining. I was booked into jail before I got into animals.
Yeah.
And I was in the process of helping a guy who knew Santeria or was in the spiritual practice. And my madrina had told me, never read anybody in a dark spot. Don't utilize certain things, and just it would be sacrilegious. But I did it for the guy out of love because I felt like something was telling me to do it. But I allowed myself to feel the vibration, and I got sick for like a week because it took over me, and I was crying, and it was just so much vibrance.
Mm-hmm.
But because I allowed it to happen, I just saw so much that night.
Right.
Like it wasn't visual, but it was just like energy coming to me, names, enumerations, just like it was just power and power and power. Not for me, but the person that I was helping.
Yeah.
Animals are very interesting.
Great teachers.
So the snake, that would be your favorite animal.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt any connection besides the wolf to a snake?
I don't know that I have much snake in me. I have a lot of reptile in me though, I feel comfort on a hot rock. But also like the need to be some sort of chameleon and like mold to the environment that I am in is very
necessary.
Yeah.
And it's a survival instinct, or is more like you like to feel soothed?
No, I think it's a way to connect with the people you're around. Like I travel a lot.
You're a good mimic.
Yeah, well, I do love that. Like I love to mimic I love accents and things like that. And when I speak other languages, it's like the first thing I love about it is the way speaking in a different way feels in my mouth, like the way my tongue has to move differently. And when I try to relate to someone else and like speak in a different way, use my words differently so that they can better understand me and we can better connect in some way, like that is really stimulating. But it doesn't feel like I'm doing it in a way that is for my safety. It's a way to relate or a way to connect, It's why I found it important to learn Spanish. It's why I found like living in the US in general. Even though I'm Italian and can't speak Italian. But yeah, there's this like, where do I live and what do I need in this time? When I'm in India or spending a lot of time there, I'm learning and studying Hindi and learning Devanagari, trying to make sure that I'm realizing the space that I'm in, not trying to get people to meet me,
Just allowing it to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty natural. Does he have a name?
His name is Poseidon.
Poseidon. Yeah, it is.
He was a 2019 hatchling produced here in Tucson.
Wow. How big is he gonna get?
You can get up to 8 foot long.
Okay. On your way.
Well, we'll get there. If you had one piece of advice to offer any freelancer or an entrepreneur, what would it be?
Notice when you don't want to be doing what it is you're doing anymore and don't do it.
And how do we notice?
I think it's that resistance. When you have some sort of second thought about what it is you're doing and you feel it in your body, that's a pretty sure sign that there has to be a different option that you can take. And be okay with saying no. I think when you have your own business or you're trying to get yourself out there, you just like everyone needs to be a yes man or something. It's like, no, this can be an opportunity. And it's like, sometimes it's not worth your time.
Absolutely.
And if you say no to something that doesn't feel right, you're going to make space for something that does. I love saying no.
And that goes with everything, even relationships.
Yes, goodbye.
So the last one. Who would you consider your spirit animal to be?
Well, I think as a white person, I'm not supposed to have a spirit animal. I don't think I'm supposed to say like it's not PC, right? There's like a big movement to not, because I don't know what that means. Even like to have a spirit animal in Native culture is like something that I don't innately understand.
Well, this is
You know?
non derivative to native culture. What I'm trying to explain with by that question would be more as who do you find yourself in the realm of the animals realm? So who would Gianna be if she happened to create herself as an animal tomorrow? Not saying that she went through the practice and then became some type of macabra or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I would say at this point in my life, it would be the zebra.
Zebra?
Yeah.
Why?
Because there's just like a flashiness about their existence that they are they are the actual unicorns. Like, look at a zebra. And like, my motorcycle is all zebra. The inside of my car is all zebra. And it just happened that way. I wasn't like, I love zebra. It was like, you know what? This feels like a zebra. I think this is a zebra. And then I like zebra'd my bike and I was like, oh my God, there you are, Reba the red zebra. Of course. But there's just, and I love the sound they make. It's like no other. It's like there's something.
Like chirp.
Yeah, it's like kind of like a chirpy horse. And they're just bizarre.
An annoying white chick.
Yeah. Like, why do you gotta drive? Why? We see you, okay? We see you. Great. I love that you're existing. Love that for you. Like, but I'm gonna stay over here. Like, I love the sight of just a lone zebra. And like I would never see an actual zebra here unless I went to the zoo, which is like why I love the zebra so much, because it's like not something that I would like. I love dogs, I love cats, I love snakes, like frogs, lizards. I see you all the time, but this thing that I'll never come across on accident is so fascinating to me. There's so much shit in the US. You can see so many things. It's actually kind of insane. Even in Tucson and like going up Mount Lemon, like you could see a bear. What do you mean? There's bears in Pima County? What are you talking about?
Mountain lions?
There's mountain lions there? Like, that blows my mind. But this thing that I will never accidentally see is like there's almost like the mystery there of its existence.
Do you think it's that connection between like you being in another country where you saw an ecological system and you're like amazed, like, oh shit, like there's an entire little world under that rock, like where you put yourself in like, oh, I need an animal that stands out because like I never see that, and maybe it's just a longing of something.
Maybe, I don't know. I think it's purely aesthetic. And like maybe the egoic.
So that's your totem animal then.
Okay. See, you're teaching me about the spirit realm.
So the totem would be who you find yourself to be the representation.
Okay.
But who is it that people see when Gianna steps in? I would say, in my perspective.
Yeah, someone needs to tell me because I don't know.
Like a flamingo. Like, okay, they're very unique. They're very precise, but they spend their life scavenging through water to find the smallest of krill to make them beautiful and pink. Not that they want to, but because they spent their entire life doing that practice.
I love that.
Flamingo.
Yeah, that tripped me out when I was like, what do you mean flamingos are pink because of what they eat?
Yeah.
It's like the carrot thing. Have you ever eaten too many carrots?
Have you ever gone to the biosphere?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was that study where they actually turned orange because they were
oh, that's right.
Carrots.
Totally. So when I went vegan, it was like it was like 14 or something. Nobody knew it was vegan. Like the Boca Burger wasn't around. And so I just ate a lot of the same thing. And orange things were very common in mine. So we turned a little orange.
Richness.
Yeah.
That's the monetary value in the Yoruban culture. It was corn and oranges. So they would exchange that for cleaning my house or taking care of my kids.
Right.
You would give them an orange and that was gold to them.
It's an auspicious color. It's the color you sit upon.
and queens of the Yoruban culture would have crowns made of oranges, calices of oranges, or the dried custard of the orange. It was very pretty. Oshun. She actually just fell off. But she was always a representation of the oranges. But she's a deity that represents love, sexuality, honey, gold, the color of yellow, the color of orange, pineapples. But she was always a deity to be feared, because if you feared her love or you betrayed her, she would send you to the cemetery with her sister. Oh yeah.
I want to know her sister.
And her
Sounds like she likes saying no too.
Yep. There's a lot of parables. There's about 456 stories found in 256 patakis. A pataki is a fragment of one story of what that Orisha lived. So what they believe is that these Orishas had different representations at different points in their lives where they died and came back. So you belong to that representation at one point in life, according to what letter comes out when you're being read. Yeah. So there's no 2-1 phrase that can ever belong to somebody else who's being read. And if that ever happens, is because you're a twin to that person, because your soul is somewhat karmic to that other soul.
Right. Cool.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Gianna, I want to say thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Same.
You said it was what animal did you? The zebra. That was your totem animal.
That's really my totem animal. Yeah.
And your flamingo is what I said is your spirit animal. Take it, but figure it out. It's not something to do with culture or anything at all. And that's something that I want to be aware of as well. People to know that this has nothing to do with native culture or anything. It's just something that I felt that I found nourishment in myself by looking at these animals and seeing their patterns and seeing the way that they move and their gestures and their mobility, that I grew. So that's what I want people to resemble in themselves. Like, what can I find in nature, and how can I become as great as that animal? Because to some point, we are these animals, and we evolved from them.
Right.
We have the same capabilities.
Again, they're great teachers. Yeah.
Yep.
We're chilling over here.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Bolsa Balls, how are you doing, brother? Thank you so much for joining. You guys have a good night.